Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, U.S. Marines are getting warned of lean times ahead, and North Korea is getting warned to stop its threatening talk. Also tonight, gun control clears its first hurdle on Capitol Hill.
And for tax procrastinators, the IRS shares last-minute tips for tax extensions, avoiding fees, and audits. Plus, an update on restarting the San Onofre nuclear power plant, when it could happen, and why ratepayers are still footing the bill. I'm Peggy Pico with those stories in just a moment.
And we'll introduce you to San Diego's Derby Dolls rolling into a new play. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. The Marine Corps is warning troops of lean times for the foreseeable future, while Defense Department sources say the Pentagon is looking for ways to reduce or even eliminate furloughs for civilian workers. Furloughs have already been cut from 22 days down to 2 weeks, and the push is on to reduce unpaid leave even more. A new video message to the Corps urges Marines to stay focused.
Our hard work with Congress addressed a number of shortfalls, but the road ahead requires every Marine to continue to conserve resources and remain disciplined warfighters. We need you to be conscious of every dollar the American public commits to keep you highly trained, educated, and prepared for crisis.
Now, the Army and Air Force have reinstated tuition assistance programs for service members. They were suspended last month because of federal budget cuts. The Marine Corps also suspended tuition assistance, but hasn't decided whether to restore it. President Obama is urging North Korea to end its saber-rattling, saying he'll take all necessary steps to protect Americans. Earlier today, North Korea hinted at a missile launch. The Pentagon says it's probably capable of arming a ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead, but says the weapons are not very reliable. Many believe North Korea may be getting ready to test-fire a missile on Monday designed to reach Guam, where U.S. military personnel are stationed. A major hurdle cleared today in Washington for the most serious gun control legislation in years. The Senate voted to begin debate, defeating a conservative effort to keep the matter from reaching the floor. The vote was watched by relatives of the victims of the Newtown school shooting.
Their voices need to be heard, and they're going to carry through us.
We're here to demand action and demand that we receive a vote and that we are allowed to have some peace of mind that our loved ones didn't die for no reason. They died protecting the children that they love, and they deserve to have a vote.
Gun control supporters set up a mock graveyard on the National Mall with 3,300 crosses representing people who've died from gun violence since the Newtown shootings. A bipartisan group of senators have finished work on a sweeping immigration reform plan. They expect to roll it out on Tuesday. 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans have been working on it for months now. The plan is expected to overhaul immigration programs, crack down on employers, and improve border security while providing a path to citizenship for those in the country illegally. Bonnie Dumanis plans to run for a 4th term as San Diego's district attorney. In a statement today, Dumanis says her office has one of the highest conviction rates in California. She was unopposed in her last 2 re-election campaigns, but might have competition this time. Trial lawyer Robert Brewer has filed papers to explore a possible challenge and says he's already started fundraising. Senator Barbara Boxer says plans to restart the San Onofre nuclear plant are dangerous and premature. We told you last night. Federal regulators say there's no significant safety risk to restarting the North County plant at partial power. San Onofre's been offline for more than a year now, and questions remain about its 2 problems and who should pay for it all. Peggy Pico has an update.
The San Onofre nuclear generating station shut down in January 2012 after a small radiation leak was detected on tubing inside 2 newly installed steam generators. Southern California Edison, which runs the plant, say they've lost millions of dollars by not producing power. Meanwhile, California ratepayers are still picking up the tab. Here with an update on the situation is Rochelle Becker, co-founder of the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility. She's also worked for many years with state and federal officials on nuclear safety issues. Rochelle, welcome.
Thank you so much.
How much money so far have ratepayers already paid for these faulty steam generators?
Well, there's sort of moving targets within the PUC case to identify all the costs, but I would say a minimum of $500 million would be in the ballpark.
Is there any chance that the ratepayers, those, will get any of this back?
Well, every party that's filed in this case, every participant except for the two utilities has said the ratepayers deserve to get their money back. So it will be an interesting proceeding to see whether or not the PUC represents the P in the PUC or the U in the PUC.
The public.
Or the utility.
Or the utility, absolutely. Is this kind of a tough battle?
I don't know. It's a new battle. This is a new challenge for the PUC as it is for the public and for the utilities. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces, and we have to do it carefully. And that's, I think, what the PUC is trying to do right now.
And certainly, I'm sure people will be watching the results to see what happens if something like this further down the road happens at another place. Aside from the steam generator problems, what other issues is San Onofre Power Nuclear, the plant, having?
Well, there are other aging issues at other nuclear power plants, and some are even phasing out because they can't pass it on to ratepayers. But the other issues are seismic issues. We have not resolved the seismic issues at San Onofre. Once through cooling issues, 1 million gallons a minute of water goes through, and the EPA says no longer, you have to do some alternatives. Those could be between $1 and $3 billion. Seismic studies between $1 and $3 billion if you have to do retrofits. There's the no insurance, no homeowners insurance, no business insurance, and a $12 billion liability limit by the federal government.
Those are for communities in a radius?
Right, in the fallout zone. And the fallout zone is 12 miles at San Onofre, 18 miles at Diablo, but the federal government said 50 miles in Japan. So what would it cost to expand the emergency planning zone? What would it cost to train and equip the emergency planners? There are so many unanswered questions, most of which came out of the Fukushima tragedy, but some of them have been in queue by the Energy Commission. They've been looking at them since 2005. We've been participating since 2005.
One of them, this plan, I want to let people know, was built in 1967.
It was designed in 1967.
1967.
Correct.
Right. And as far as the waste on there, have things progressed on how they're dealing with nuclear waste?
There's thousands of tons of high-level radioactive waste sitting on site. In 1982, the federal government said, take it somewhere else. It's still there. The federal government has nowhere to take it. A seismically active coastal zone is not the place to store waste. A year and a half ago, the federal government said, we might want to leave it here for 300 years. Looking at those coastal bluffs today when we did an earlier interview and thinking 300 years those are going to be the same, I think is a bit optimistic.
How urgent is it to get this power plant either operating again or permanently shut down?
I think it's important to take our time to make sure that we've done everything right, because this is 2,200 megawatts of power. We're reliant on that, but when 2,200 megawatts doesn't run, it's missing that power. So San Diego's actually been a victim of poor decision making by Edison. SDG&E didn't want to replace them. Had they not been replaced, the plant would have shut down in 2013. There would have been a plan on the table of how to replace those megawatts. None of that happened, so now we're in 2013 and just starting that process again.
One question I have about this, Edison wanted to restart the steam generators at 70% power by this summer, as you mentioned. But before the problem started, I want to say maybe 2005, they said they must run both reactors at 88% power to be cost effective.
That's correct.
Why did they change? Is there any evidence that things have changed enough to make that?
No, but there is a provision in the PUC that if they can get that plant operating for 90 days, they get to put it back in the rate base again. They get to start charging customers again.
But there's nothing technically that says that, A, they either needed the 88% in the first place, or B, things have changed.
Those are questions that definitely will be investigated in the PUC decision. We're looking very closely at all of their filings, what they're talking about, what it costs, what they expect to charge ratepayers. If shareholders want to restart this plant, if shareholders want to pay for all the things that are in this legislation that's upcoming, fine. But this is ratepayers, and we're tired of paying for things we're not getting.
Okay, we are out of time. Rochelle Becker, thank you so much for this update, and I'm sure we'll be following this as things progress.
Thanks, Peggy.
Looks like Padre fans will go another year without being able to see games on Time Warner Cable. UT San Diego reports another breakdown in talks between Time Warner and Fox Sports. Fox owns the broadcast rights. The companies released dueling statements tonight. Fox says fans will need to look for another option to see the games. Time Warner says they want to carry the Padres, but with a deal making sense for all its customers. North County Transit is reporting progress on its Sprinter eruption, the halting of the commuter trains due to brake problems. They've done their testing and ordered new brake rotors for 12 Sprinter trains in the fleet. The parts are expected to arrive by the end of the month. Sprinter trains have been sidelined since early March. No word yet on when they'll start running again. Governor Brown is a staunch advocate of high-speed rail here in California. Today, he took a ride on a bullet train from Beijing to Shanghai. Brown's on a trade mission to China with about 90 business leaders from around the state. He's already signed some agreements on trade and the environment. Well, summer gas prices could drop to the lowest we've seen in 3 years. The Energy Department predicts a steady decline in gas prices because of increased oil production and cars with better fuel efficiency. It won't be a huge drop. They're expecting prices will be about 6 cents a gallon less than last year, but those pennies add up because fuel eats up so much of our paychecks. A campaign against hunger rolled onto San Diego State's campus today with a 40-foot-long mobile exhibit designed to educate students on world hunger and modern agriculture. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy has the story.
Students touring with the Hunger U exhibit are hoping to inspire their peers to become part of the solution to end global hunger and empower them to take action in their community. Catherine Nye is a Hunger U staff member and a sophomore at Utah State University. She says they're touring college campuses because social and political views are shaped there.
College students are really easy to get fired up about stuff. They're very passionate. They're just starting out in life, and everybody needs a cause. And so if we can catch them now and help them become part of this solution, we can have a lot of people on our side.
Nye is encouraging SDSU students to organize canned food drives and become educated in advanced agriculture to feed the growing population. A recent UN report reveals 1 in 5 people in the world suffers from food insecurity. By 2050, crop production rates will need to double to put an adequate amount of food on the table. SDSU is the second of 10 stops during the month-long West Coast tour. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
A Nobel Prize medal was auctioned off today for more than $2 million. The medal was awarded to Francis Crick in 1962 for his discovery of DNA. Crick died in 2004, and his heirs are now selling some of his possessions to raise money for science. Salk Institute of La Jolla will receive some of the proceeds of the sale. An update on the Camp Pendleton Marine videotaped in a road rage last week. He's now getting counseling. His father says Sergeant Joshua Brightman has post-traumatic stress disorder triggered by 2 deployments to Afghanistan. He says his son told him he blacked out during the incident. The Marine Corps is investigating. The government is extending one of its refinancing programs. It's called HARP, or Home Affordable Refinance Program. It's for mortgages backed by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Borrowers can refinance at lower rates. More than 2 million folks have used it so far, about half of the number expected. So HARP is being extended through 2015. Monday is the federal and state deadline to file your tax returns. Peggy Pico shares some last-minute tips from the IRS.
The IRS says about 1/3 of all Americans file their taxes in April. The deadline is Monday. And back with some last-minute tips on extensions, how to avoid fees, and triggers for an audit is my guest, Rafael Tolino. He's with the IRS for Southern California and Nevada. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Post offices. It used to be, I know down at Midway and several other post offices, we'd see lines of people right before midnight lining up. Are any post office still doing that?
I believe Midway is open late until midnight, and you can check the Postal Service website to be sure. But as the years have gone by and technology and e-file has brought us to where we are, you have less and less people who are waiting until the last minute and getting to a computer and hitting enter instead, which is so much more convenient and easy. And I'm sure the post office is adjusting. But certainly you want to check with them first just to be sure.
Let's talk about this online e-filing. What is it and can it be used for?
Oh, it's basically transmitting your return electronically, and the convenient ease of it is just night and day compared to the old paper way. In fact, about 90%, almost 90% as of just a few days ago, of all returns in thus far have been transmitted electronically, choosing direct deposit for the refund, so paperless tax returns. Really easy, really simple, and certainly as we approach Monday, if you haven't gotten it done yet and you're looking to get it done, there's the way to do it to make it much more easy.
Very fast. Yeah. And when it comes to the extension, though, you can do that online as well, the 6-month automatic extension?
You can do that electronically through software, yes, or the paper form 4868, which just takes a couple minutes to mail in. The extension of time gives you the extension to file through October 15th, but not to pay. So if you owe or you think you owe, you do want to make a payment, something. If you can't full pay it and let the IRS know, file the return. That way you avoid any penalties or interest that can accrue on your account, depending on the situation, how much you pay.
Is there a charge for or penalty for filing an extension?
No, the extension's free. But like I say, if you have a balance due and you don't make a payment or you don't let the IRS know, there could be interest that's tacked on. But do file the return and do pay something, which is important, as opposed to not filing a return, because that penalty is much greater than not paying once you file.
Speaking of penalties, what are the most common red flags that we see people are rushing that'll sort of set that return aside for an audit?
Well, the red flag you see are people missing out on deductions and credits because you're doing the return in haste. But in terms of audits and numbers and such, those who self-report tend to get a closer look because we match W-2s, 1099s, 1098s, and that tends to be pretty good with computer matching and the such. If you don't report something, you might get a letter in the mail. So do take the time to file an accurate return the first time, because let's face it, nobody wants that correspondence with the IRS with a letter in the mail down the road saying, hey, you made a mistake or you missed something. So do take the time the first time.
What about if you don't owe any money or you break an even? They don't owe you. We don't, nobody owes anybody. It's a zero balance. Should you still file?
You can. And for example, if you don't meet the minimum threshold by law to file a return in terms of the amount of income, you may want to file. You had a part-time job. You had money withheld. Maybe you qualify for something called the Earned Income Tax Credit, which can be had and increase your refund significantly if you qualify for it and take it. But we need a tax return for it. So not a bad idea, depending on your situation, to file a return, and perhaps you have a refund coming. What happens is you leave money on the table, and just real quick, for 2009, we have almost $1 billion waiting to be claimed. April 15th is a deadline for that, because after 3 years it becomes property of the Treasury. So as you see, there are some folks who leave that money on the table. So that's just an example.
They can come get it before Monday.
Right, for that year, 2009 tax year.
For 2009.
Yeah.
The Miramar Recycling Center is one of many places in town that are offering to shred old tax documents up till, I think, around the 19th or a week or so afterwards. How long do you need to keep tax returns and receipts?
I was going to say, not a bad idea to shred old things based on where we are these days, but certainly 3 years for the whole return. Not a bad idea to keep your 1040 indefinitely, just the 1040 form. If you have a capital asset, for example, like a home or rental home, as long as you own that asset, you may want to take advantage and keep those papers. And that information on your screen there is accurate as well. Depends on your situation and your comfort level, certainly.
So 3 years if you owe anything, or if you had a refund. 6 years if you underreported or didn't report more than 25% of your income. And the 7 years is for this loss claim for worthless securities. What is that?
Basically, stocks and bonds that have been reduced to zero, that kind of thing. So stuff you put on a Schedule D, which, by the way, if you have a capital loss of $3,000, up to $3,000 can be deducted on the front side of your tax form, since we're talking about taxes and such. But record keeping is certainly a good idea, and we all have our own ideas and our own situations for it.
But for most of us, about three to 6 years.
General answer, yes.
All right, yeah. Raphael, we have to send you back to your crunch time, I'm sure. So thanks so much for this update.
Anytime, of course.
San Diego Derby dolls provide the inspiration for the new play Derby Wise from Circle, Circle, Dot, Dot. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando takes us to the dollhouse to get to know the real players before checking out the play.
If this is what you think women's roller derby is, think again.
People seem to think it's like WWF or like wrestling, like it's all fake. And so I've been a target, and everyone's like, oh, you do roller derby, so you guys like beat each other up. And no, we don't beat each other up. There is a game behind it. There are strategies behind it. There's a lot of exercise and work put into it. So nothing is fake, it's all real.
Isabel Ringer started playing roller derby in her 20s. Now she's general manager of the San Diego Derby Dolls.
We're a roller derby organization. We've been around for about 8 years in San Diego. We play women's bank track roller derby. We are very actively trying to make the sport a professional sport. There are tons of people who I think still don't perceive roller derby as a sport at this time. We're always working on sort of breaking some of those stigmas and generalizations and kind of changing what that public perception is of the women who play roller derby.
Not only are they athletes, but they're also smart businesswomen who have a website, a YouTube channel, and their own training and event venue.
I'm Bonnie Destroyer, and welcome to the beautiful dollhouse in an undisclosed location downtown San Diego. And we're training for a game that we have coming up this weekend against a team from Arizona. The dollhouse is our full-featured training facility. We rent this place out ourselves, and we hold fitness classes for the public. And then privately, we have our own training sessions, and we have scrimmages.
Bonnie Destroyer started the Derby Dolls in 2005.
Starting the league was an amazing experience. It's by far the best decision I ever made in my life. Before roller derby, I always felt a little bit like an artist without an art. Like I've always felt like a creative person, and like I was willing to give myself to a cause, but I just never really had one. And roller derby gave me a sense of community and a healthy outlet for all of the aggression that I tend to have. You can't tell now, but that's because I use it all at playing roller derby.
You know, I came in at 26, this kind of raw, you know, this rough rock, and through friction and, you know, conflict and all of this, you get all polished up. I don't think anyone joins roller derby because they're like, hey, I really want to improve myself. But that sort of becomes a byproduct of being a part of an organization like this, where it's owned by women, it's run by women, and it's a full contact sport. I mean, there's really nothing out there that's like what we're doing.
Which is why Circle Circle ... decided to create a play inspired by the San Diego Derby Dolls and their unique entrepreneurial style. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And Beth will take us behind the scenes of Derby Wise, the play, tomorrow night. You can see more at derbydolls.com.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, senators are set to cast the first vote on a new guns bill. That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
San Diego weather, overcast or a mix of sun and clouds over the next few days. Coastal temperatures will be mostly in the mid-60s. For the inland valleys, 70s for the next couple of days. And cooling a bit by Sunday, partly cloudy in the mountains and cooler. As for the desert, 80s to 90s for the weekend. There's a North County community with an unusual name. If you've ever seen or heard it, it might have puzzled you. Ken Kramer explains all of this in tonight's story about San Diego.
Beautiful area up here, don't you think? The sun sparkling through a canopy of trees, roads picturesque, just like the place it's named for, in England. Yes, in England, in Newcastle, amidst the old buildings dripping with tradition and history there, is a public park called Jesmond Dene. You can look at the tourist brochure and see its beautiful Jesmond Dene. Well, when Mr. W.G. Moore came to San Diego County and started developing this area on what is today the east side of Interstate 15 north of Highway 78, it made him think of that place far away. So he called his project Jesmond Dene Estates. In 1932, he wrote that he was planning a couple of dozen homes, had spent more than $10,000 building 2 of them already. A new water system was going in, where the Jesmond Dene Park of England could offer croquet, swimming, boating, dancing, and rustic walking. The Jesmond Dene of San Diego would offer beauty in its own way. That was the promise. Well, a couple of years later, in 1934, it was sold again, the new owner pledging to make further improvements, and he did. And after all these years and much more development, the name has stuck. Look on maps near Escondido if you've ever seen it and wondered. That's how it's pronounced, by the way, Jesmond Dene. Decades later, I'll bet W.G. Moore would appreciate that it's still remembered, and perhaps especially so that there's our county's own Jesmond Dene Park there, a few thousand miles away from its British namesake maybe, but in its own way, something historic about San Diego.
If you want to watch more of Ken's stories about San Diego, his half-hour show can be seen tonight and every Thursday night at 8 o'clock here on KPBS. Recapping tonight's top stories, the Marine Corps is warning troops of lean times for the foreseeable future, while Defense Department sources say the Pentagon is looking for ways to reduce or even eliminate furloughs for civilian workers. Furloughs have already been cut from 22 days down to 2 weeks, and the push is on to reduce unpaid leave even more. A new video message to the Corps urges Marines to stay focused.
Our hard work with Congress addressed a number of shortfalls, but the road ahead requires every Marine to continue to conserve resources and remain disciplined warfighters. We need you to be conscious of every dollar the American public commits to keep you highly trained, educated, and prepared for crisis.
The Army and Air Force have reinstated tuition assistance programs for service members. They were suspended last month because of federal budget cuts. Marine Corps also suspended tuition assistance but hasn't decided whether to restore it. President Obama is urging North Korea to end its saber rattling, saying he'll take all necessary steps to protect Americans. Earlier today, North Korea hinted at a missile launch. And looks like Padres fans will go another year without being able to see games on Time Warner Cable. UT San Diego reports tonight another breakdown in talks between Time Warner and Fox Sports. Fox, of course, owns the broadcast rights. The companies released dueling statements tonight. Fox says fans will need to look for another option to see the games. Time Warner says they want to carry the Padres, but with a deal making sense for all of its customers. You can find tonight's stories and download the KPBS app, all on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.